Okay, welcome everyone. Welcome Nupur. Welcome everybody who's joined. This will be our follow-on discussion on Ayurveda, interview or conversation with Nupur. And Nupur is a highly trained Ayurveda practitioner, and having studied at the Maharshi University with the Maharshi tradition, having studied with Dr. Vasant Lad with his tradition from Pune, let's say, and then also spent some time, quite a bit of time in the Kerala tradition in Kerala. So she answered wonderful questions. If you could, if you remember from last time, she answered what are doshas, and I asked her, what is the one thing you can do from Ayurveda? And she said, like, just breathe normally, without, if nothing else, just breathe normally. And if you can keep the breath straight and straight from the belly, then that itself is the greatest thing from Ayurveda. So let me ask Nupur. First thing is, Nupur, you had this lineages. How do they inform you, and what is your lesson from moving forward? Do you draw from all three lineages, or you sort of choose one lineage? How does that studying in three different lineages at different levels and different amounts help you?
Well, first, I think it's necessary to elucidate what is a lineage. What does lineage mean in the context of, you know, computers and modern technology, where people can access information at the tip of their fingers? They can research things by typing it into Google. Lineage is the continuous passing on of knowledge from teacher to student, from student who becomes teacher to their student, and so on. And this is the unbroken chain that has brought Ayurveda to the world. And there are many lineages who all practice Ayurveda in their own ways, which is to say that the basic teachings are the same, right? The samhitas, the compendiums written by these ancient sages, they are the same. But the difference is that the way that it is practiced is informed by the climate of wherever people learned it, the kinds of plants that originate there. All of these kinds of things help people, helps these ancient people figure out, wait, this is the way that Ayurveda works best for us. This is the way that this knowledge can be most useful to us. And as that knowledge spread across those areas, if everyone could make sure to mute themselves, thank you. As the knowledge spread across those different areas, it became specialized. And so Ayurveda, in the form of lineage, means that it is exactly what a person needs for where it comes from. And for me, having learned from so many different people, from so many different lineages, in Maharishi Ayurveda alone, the brilliance of Maharishi was that he wanted to bring together all the lineages. And so he brought together many Vaidyas from many Ayurvedic doctors from many places across India, and brought together their knowledge. And the thing that is key to me is just pick a lineage, any lineage, and follow it. It will always give you the fruit. It will always give you the benefits. The fact of following one tradition is what actually gives it power. Not necessarily, this is the best knowledge from this one, this is the best knowledge from this one, because it is the energy that is passed on from teacher to student that actually gives Ayurveda its power, not the knowledge itself. And so this is, for me, the defining characteristic of lineage. And for me, Dr. Lad's lineage resonates strongest with me because I found that the way he practices is most in line with the way that I am built as a person, my personality, etc., what I have to offer the world. And so I follow his totally. Of course, I respect Maharishi and his tradition when it comes to Ayurveda. I respect what I saw when I was in Kerala and seeing those traditions. But I wholeheartedly follow Dr. Lad, and till date, I have not been led astray, and I don't think it's possible for him to lead me astray in his teachings. If anything goes wrong, I am pretty sure it's because I did something wrong. But he just structured Ayurveda in this beautiful way, and I follow it, and it just easily helps me help others. So that's
Okay.
the importance of lineage,
Right.
the
Okay.
direct transmission of energy from teacher to student.
Exactly. Thank you. So let's get into it. Last time we talked about doshas. So one of the questions, follow-on questions, came from one of the attendees. I think she's already on the call. But the point was these doshas, right? You describe doshas, describe a personality. Now, when we are born, are we born with certain particular doshas or imbalances, and do the imbalances remain the same or they change? So what is the nature of the sort of stability or malleability of doshas over time?
So in Ayurvedic philosophy, in the understanding of health in the Ayurvedic paradigm, there are two very important concepts. One is prakriti, literally means nature, but also in this context means the wholeness of who you are come into this world to be. And that is fixed, it doesn't change. And then there's vikriti, which does change. Vikriti is your current state, which usually when vikriti is referred to, it is indicating that you are not in perfect health because it is different from the unchangeable prakriti. So vikriti is moving, vikriti is changing. You sit in the sun for one day, your pitta shoots up a little bit. You sit in the wind for a day, your vata shoots up a little bit. You drink some cold water, your kapha shoots up. Or you sleep some, kapha becomes nice and strong. There's many ways to think about it, many ways to see it, but that is always changing. You are always in engagement with your health. Prakriti, though, doesn't change. And I remember when I was studying, there was some confusion in my class because there are multiple kinds of prakriti. There's janma prakriti, that is the genetic information you come into this world with. Essentially what is formed when sperm and ovum meet, the genetic information that composes that zygote, that is your janma prakriti. That is the information that brought you into existence at all. But then, of course, in the womb, in early childhood development, a lot of things can change. For example, someone who has malnutrition at a young age, their normal will become different and they cannot now go to what would have been normal if they had, had full nutrition in the womb or in early childhood. That can no longer be reversed. And so their prakriti, their immovable state of perfect health, what they can achieve changes. It becomes a certain new prakriti. And so accordingly, there's a new prakriti then, deha prakriti, bodily prakriti. So you have two, genetic prakriti, bodily prakriti. Now, deha prakriti doesn't change, janma prakriti, genetic prakriti, they don't change. Because, of course, your genetic information is what it is. Your body is what it is and is where it should be. So then your prakriti, the one that we work with mostly when we're thinking therapeutically is deha prakriti. Janma prakriti is for understanding how it came into being, and of course for people like Dr. Lad who can do healing on the level of helping to shift what genes are activated. I'm not at that level. I'm just going to be frank with you, and I'm not really concerned with being. If I can help people reach their deha prakriti, that will bring so much healing for every person who can reach that. That brings so much healing. It brings so much liveliness and wholesomeness that worrying about that quintessential perfect state you were in when you were formed in the womb, it's not really worth being concerned about. But prakriti is fixed. People worry, they're like, oh, but is it always changing? No, there is a state that you can be in, a state of perfect health, and that is what you are always working towards.
Very good, very good. Thank you. So so this thing about now there were a lot of questions about food, and you mentioned something about food. And I was mentioning that just a few days ago, I was at the Nupur cafeteria and I was taking more salsa. And this one lady, a friend of mine, she said, "Oh, I don't want to take it because that'll be too much pitta." So then I just said, "Wow, that was interesting that how she spoke definitely." So is there such a thing that eating X leads to that dosha, or is it sort of more nuanced? Is that something you can address?
As always, the answer is yes and no. It is that straightforward. yes, when you eat salsa, something spicy, you're likely to increase pitta because spice is pungency. Pungency increases pitta. The six tastes, sweet, sour, salty, bitter, pungent, astringent are each connected to their own actions on the doshas. So yes, okay, it's sour, increases pitta. It's pungent, and increases pitta. But here's the key factor. Is that a bad thing? Not necessarily. And I find it funny actually that she picked up on that, oh, salsa is pitta and aggravating, so don't eat it. When actually, I would say the real problem is that you're eating fruits, tomatoes, etc., with cooked foods and usually cheese. That's probably a bigger problem. But in this case, I would say that if you're eating something quite heavy and it's quite heavy on the digestion and it's lots of cooling things on digestion like cheese or corn tortillas, etc., it's probably better to have some pungency with it because it'll make it easier for your body to digest it because you need to have balance of six tastes, all of the qualities, and pitta is connected to digestion. So when you increase the pitta quality of food, you increase your ability to digest it. So these are the key factors, right? Is you cannot think of it as just it increases this dosha, so it's bad. Well, everything increases a dosha because everything is connected to the doshas. You drink some water, you increase kapha. You sit and in the dry air outside, you're increasing vata. You cannot avoid the doshas, and there is no need to be afraid of them because you don't need to feel like you have to avoid doshas because it is impossible. You have to think smart about what do I need right now. Actually, it's a beautiful connection. I was just looking at this sutra in my collection that Dr. Lad felt were important. He gave us a collection of sutras that he felt were useful diagnostically, etc. And the one I come back to again and again is Naktam dinani me yanti katham bhutasya sampratihi bhoka panna bhavatyevam nityam sannihita smritihi. Those who day and night think, who am I? Why am I? What am I doing? Am I helping? Am I hurting? Am I helping others? Am I hurting others? They are not connected to this life, the past life, or the future, and they are forever disconnected from the pain and suffering of this life. This is the key factor. When you are present, when you are aware, when you are questioning, do I need this right now? Is this bringing me health right now or happiness right now? When you can think like that, you don't need to be concerned with this is specifically pitta, this is specifically kapha, because it is that awareness that is coming through into you through your food. It is that awareness that is coming into you with whatever activity it is you're doing. And yes, sometimes your body will tell you, better lay off the pungent spices, girl. That's not really what you need right now, because your body is saying that you have too much going on right now. Please turn off your
please mute yourself. Please mute yourself. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. So when you have that awareness, you don't need to worry about these kinds of things, because then the nuances naturally...
Oh, please unmute yourself. Yeah.
Okay. So these nuances naturally become part of how you live, because your awareness structures how you will do things. You will not be drawn to the salsa if you already have excess of pitta in you, because your body will inherently tell you that you don't need that. So it's a matter of awareness. It's a matter of your particular needs. It is not a matter of judging this food is good, this food is bad. In terms of doshic balance, everything can be poison, everything can be medicine.
Okay, please mute yourself. Okay, thank you. So building on this idea of food being this or that, there was a question from my friend Anil Chandramani. He's on the call, and he asked about, I think last time also, he responded to this, we had milk and yogurt and what was it, fruit. He said, because you had said don't combine milk and fruit, etc. So Chandramani, do you want to ask the question yourself, or is that okay? I just continue. If you want to ask, you can unmute yourself and please ask.
It's okay. Go ahead. Go ahead. I'm fine.
All right. All right. Thank you. Nice to hear your voice. So in any case, the idea being that how should milk and yogurt be consumed in what combination with what food? Are there any sort of general sense of things that we should keep in mind?
It's actually great that you brought that up, because fruit and milk are two things that in particular are quite, let's say, finicky about what they're paired with. Fruit in general should not be consumed with things that are not fruit. And within that, melon should not be consumed with things that are not melon. Don't eat watermelon as dessert after your meal. I cannot describe the number of times I've had a lovely meal at a restaurant and then they bring out a bowl of cantaloupe and honeydew and watermelon. And I'm like, after food, do you want me to die? I mean, I'm joking. Of course, people don't know, they don't realize, but melon is, because of the way it's processed in the body, it is primarily water. And when you eat it with other foods, it immediately waters it down. Bam, you got ama. Bam, you have, like unprocessed food material that is floating in your body. And so that's melon specifically. With fruit in general, you want to pair fruit with other fruit. Now, of course, if you're eating strawberries with bananas or whatever, it's fine. Eat whichever fruit you want with other fruit. It's not really a problem. But eating fruit with, people eat strawberries and cheese. That's a thing. Why? People eat fruit and cheesecake. People eat dairy and fruit in any combination, really. Like, don't do it. They're completely opposite in their qualities. They're completely opposite in their gunas. That's the 20 qualities that we use to define things in the world, Ayurvedically speaking. Sour and pungent and hot, and versus like sweet, cool, hot, cooling, heavy. They're just in opposition to each other. So yes, definitely no fruit and yogurt. Nuh-uh. No fruit and yogurt, no fruit and milk. If you're making a smoothie, go for a nut milk instead of a dairy milk. All these things. And of course, so yeah, in general, dairy of any kind and fruit, no. Fruit with anything else, no. And milk, you want to avoid milk and meat together, milk and eggs, milk and beans. These are the kinds of things that they just don't sit well together. Partially because they're of multiple, you'll notice it's like multiple kinds of protein. They don't process well together. And also because, for example, meat is hot. It is pungent in the body. It is processed in a way that, it has a much shorter processing time. Milk is cooling. It is heavy. It is cool in the body. Building, and it takes a little bit longer to process. So when you eat those together, it doesn't mean that you can't have them in the same day, but in the same meal, your body gets confused. It's like, you want me to do this and you want me to do that at the same time? I can only do one thing at a time, just like you. You try patting your head and rubbing your belly in opposite directions at the same time. You can't do it. Neither can your stomach. It's trying to do too many things at once. So it's a matter of keeping like things together because they're easier for the body to digest. So yes, to summarize again, melons by themselves, fruit only with other fruit other than melons, and milk not with meat, not with beans, not with cheese. Why would you put milk and cheese together? Anyway, not with eggs and not with fruit. And yogurt is a little more forgiving. You can cook with it. It's not as much of a problem because it's already been processed in one sense, right? It's been fermented. So yogurt is a little bit better when it comes to combining with the other things. But again, cheese, not with meat. I know that sucks for a lot of people because that's what they're used to. And not with beans either, which is kind of a problem if you love Mexican food. But that's what the folks said down when they made Ayurveda. I didn't make the rules, so that's what we're working with.
Okay, very good. Continuing on this then of
Sorry.
food, let's ask Steve Boss, who's our global chef par excellence. And so Steve, go ahead.
Yes, I'm wondering how, since what I am used to as far as consultations are concerned is generally an Ayurvedic practitioner taking your pulse. How how is that adaptable, if it in any way possible, during this particular time period?
A very important question. Now, of course, pulse is a very, very important diagnostic tool, which Dr. Lad himself has talked about extensively, that unfortunately, in many parts of India, especially, but across the world where Ayurveda is practiced, the knowledge of pulse diagnosis has kind of been lost because people are, through imperialistic influence mostly, people have been pushed towards more Western understanding of diagnosis or modern medical understanding of diagnosis. So even those who are practicing Ayurveda don't use pulse. So yes, of course, pulse is very important. It is lovely that Dr. Lad and others like him have brought this knowledge back to the world of Ayurveda. However, there are many other diagnostic tools we have. For one thing, questioning. This is one of the strengths of Ayurveda, I feel, is that we allow people agency over their own health, because asking them questions, letting them be an expert witness on their own health is an integral part of the process. I ask someone, how have you been eating? Please walk me through your diet. How have your bowel movements been? How much water do you usually drink? Oh, I don't really have a structured amount. Okay, that is already information for me right there. And so this is all the information that I can use. Or looking at their face, there's all kinds of diagnostic marks on the face. Or if you're someone like Dr. Lad, which I aspire to be, he asks people to look into his third eye on camera, and he literally takes his pulse and is feeling their pulse through the energetic connection. There are all kinds of things. There's all kinds of ways. And the true factor is not what tools are available to you, because it's not about, we're not worried about getting your CT scan done here. It's not about physical access. It's about your level of insight. So a really profoundly insightful Ayurvedic physician is able to see the person in front of them, whether it's at a distance through a camera, whether it's right in front of them, and they're able to identify what needs doing, what this person needs, whether it's encouragement, whether they need to be scolded, whether they need all the recommendations or just one. These are the things that the physician has to do, and that's not tied to physical location. So there's still plenty we can do. To give other examples, there's Vaidyas who can tell what the person needs just by hearing them walk towards their door. They haven't even entered the room. They can tell by hearing, right? There's Vaidyas who can tell by looking at you what you need. They don't even need to take pulse. Dr. Lad tells a story. He saw a Vaidya who didn't need to take pulse, but what would happen was that he would look at the patient and then tell them what they needed, which was correct. But then the patient would feel like, but you didn't do anything. How can you know what I need? They would feel unloved for. They would feel uncared for. And so then, just to make them happy, that Vaidya would go and take their pulse and touch their wrist, and the person would go, oh, okay, the healing is happening already. And that was all they needed. And the information that was needed to be passed on would be passed on. The Vaidya didn't need that to heal or to understand, but it was all about that healing connection. And we can have that anywhere.
Very beautiful. By the way, if others have questions, either raise your hands or please type in your questions. So I had another question that also came up through people. One is this whole idea of Ayurveda versus modern medicine. Does Ayurveda give only general immunity level sort of information, or also has point solutions to particular specific challenges or problems that people are facing?
I would just like to say first that I find it rather sad that modern medicine and Ayurveda are placed in opposition to each other often. Not that I'm saying this person was doing that. I'm saying this is not a real dichotomy. Ayurveda also includes modern medicine, because Ayurveda is the science of life. It includes anything that helps sustain life, create life, maintain life. And modern medicine, of course, does that. When you are in a traumatic car accident, you're not going to worry about taking your thrift regularly. You're going to go in for emergency surgery. And modern medicine is so good at all kinds of quick acting, life-saving interventions. And that is a very important part of the process. And leading that into our current crisis, yes, that absolutely means that you're going to want to go probably more for modern medical interventions if you get COVID. If you're worrying about, I am sick right now, then yes, go, well, maybe the hospital is not the safest place to go right now, depending on where you are, but whatever help you need, modern medicine is probably the best way to go for your, antibiotics or whatever it is, in whatever medical situation it is. But if you are worried about immunity long term, building it up, then Ayurveda is the best way to go. Absolutely, because it helps to actually fill in any holes wherever they are, any defects in your system, and just generally build you more robustly. However, Ayurveda as it's practiced in the West is not the same as Ayurveda as it's practiced in its homeland, as is practiced in India. There are many things, many very powerful medications that are available in India that are not available abroad because of, frankly, a misunderstanding of their contents. People are concerned about, they use mercury in their processing, and so you're getting mercury content. It's like, well, that mercury, of course, there's also manufacturers who have, unscrupulous processes and don't do everything they should the traditional way. But that medicine, when it's made properly, the mercury and other heavy metal content has been rendered inert. It's just a amplifier to the powerful medication that is also there. And so that is the key factor that makes that medication so powerful as like a Ayurvedic antibiotic, for example. But those are not available here. And so unfortunately, they cannot be part of how we think about Ayurvedic healing power in the West because they are not currently available. But that is something we are building towards. That is something that ideally we as a larger Ayurvedic community would like the FDA or other, control boards to understand, is that these medicines are not working in the way that you understand. Please bring your understanding to bear on it in a more open-minded way. And I trust that eventually, as these understanding, scientific-minded people see the power that this medicine has at home in India, they will be interested to bring it abroad as well. But for now, Ayurveda scope with in terms of this current crisis is, more immunity-based than emergency.
Thank you. And the follow-on question to it would be, some people feel that Ayurveda gives not the same advice to everybody, not consistent. And I think you referred that it's very contextual based. Can you say something about, somebody may have the same symptoms, but how would Ayurveda treat them differently?
Are you the same as every other person who has the same disease? Is every person that has diabetes the same? No. So how can they be treated the same? This is the basic understanding. This is the basic principle, is that it's just not possible to treat every person exactly the same, to give them the same herbs even for the same disease, because the system they are originating in is not the same. Diabetes, first of all, Ayurvedically speaking, the diabetes family, which in the West consists of diabetes insipidus and diabetes mellitus, which is the two, essential kinds, is a much larger family because they grouped a lot of other things within that family that are separate in the modern understanding. So that's just, I guess I chose diabetes as an example. But anyway, just using that example, there are such a different understanding, right, of what makes diabetes, what actually makes this unique as a as a disease process as compared to any other. But that is originating from within your body. Now, if a person is naturally more kapha and they have diabetes, it's maybe a little bit harder to control because kapha is what makes diabetes possible. And so you're trying to treat someone who naturally is more predisposed to accumulate more kapha versus someone who has vata who has diabetes. They are already, I mean, this is stereotyping, but they're already emaciated. They're already dried up. Diabetes is going to work very differently in their system. So you would approach it differently. You would be not necessarily just get rid of all the sugars, get rid of all the fat, all this. You would still be wanting to help that person maintain body weight. You would still be wanting to help them maintain all of their needs that way while also affecting this disease process and reversing it. So these are the things we have to keep in mind. And that means that absolutely, you cannot treat every individual the same. And it's not even a matter of, I think that, so I do it. It's a matter of the person is in front of me. I'm not worrying about what I've treated before. I had this person who had that. There was this person who had that. I'm treating the person right in front of me as if they are new, as if this is fresh information. When you let the knowledge flow newly in every moment, you're able to engage with that person as if they are your first patient without any prejudice, without any stereotyping, and you're able to give them exactly what they need. But when you're building your medical practice on, oh, but that person had that, so it has to look exactly the same, you have immediately done the person in front of you a disservice because they are beautiful and vibrant and unique and they have their own needs.
Yeah, thank you. I agree. Even Maharishi has been said to have said like this and that. People say, oh, but Maharishi told me this. Somebody said, no, but Maharishi told me that. And I think it all depends on the context. Even for the same person, you can have different requirement of, some help or health requirement. So we have again a question from our Steve Boss. So Steve, go ahead, please.
So at the beginning, when you were talking about the different Ayurvedic traditions and how, for example, in India, those traditions are even different in terms of, even though the basis is the same, and there's all this knowledge that is standardized from ancient sages, but the development of we'll say the practical basis of it in those particular areas has some slight variations, which I would think some of that is based on the particular plants that are available and minerals in those particular areas. And what I was wondering is there a school, whether it's Vasant Lads or some other school, or is there a general understanding, or what is the general understanding, for example, in the States? I would think that there would be treatments that would be more profound that could be given here based on the climatic conditions that produce certain types of flora and fauna here that would make it the application of those more effective for people who live here. And I'm wondering two questions really. Is Ayurveda adaptable in that particular instance, which I assume it would be since different treatments belong to different parts in India too, but is there anything that's prevalent today in the States that takes advantage, if this is true, of the specific flora and fauna that we have available here?
Now, this is something that is currently in development. Now, to put it in context, Ayurveda because I'm in an American context, I'll just use America as an example. Ayurveda in America is only about, 40 years old, 50 years old, give or take, 45 years old. That is not a lot of time to build up a very strong connection between the ancient Ayurvedic knowledge and the herbalists and modern apothecaries that are working in the West today. And so unfortunately, the situation is that, yes, absolutely. I mean, long story short, that's something we're building towards. The nuanced version is that there just isn't quite that understanding yet of what the flora and fauna here, flora, not fauna, flora here can do because we just haven't had the time to do that. That being said, of course, there are many examples of substitutions that happen. For example, there are many herbs that are used in India for high blood pressure that are not necessarily available here, or are endangered, or for whatever reason, they're not found here. And so when I was studying at the Institute, what we would often use instead was hawthorn berry, which is a Western herb, which is a berry that grows in the West, that also is suitable for helping to with hypertension. And it was equally powerful. I had clients who saw benefits from using it. And this is what we're building towards, is bringing these traditions of knowledge together. There have been generations of people who are working with the herbal knowledge here. In particular, actually, this is something I personally want to do, is to, whenever I get the opportunity, talk to native healers, native shamans, native mystical people and healers across the North American subcontinent, because they're the people who have the strongest connection to this knowledge in this context. They're the people who have been working with this for tens of millennia, and they are the people that are the most suitable to bring that knowledge and bridge it with Ayurvedic knowledge. And so that is something in the works. Personally, I'm working on it. I have several friends. I have a friend specifically who's working in Brazil to help connect it with that knowledge there. So this is a work in progress, but absolutely, Ayurveda is, Sushruta himself said that a true Ayurvedic physician is one who's able to identify what is useful in his context and use it therapeutically. That is the most important thing. What is the use of knowing, well, you can use this herb for diabetes if it's not available near you? It is completely useless. That knowledge is not serving the person in front of you, and thus it is worthless. So the true information is, what kind of herbs help with diabetes? Can I find them in my vicinity? Are they here? Yes. Okay, use it, right? And so this is the wisdom that Ayurveda is bringing to bear on this problem.
Very well. I think that's very good. In fact, it goes beyond Ayurveda into all of Vedas, which is very, in the context based. Like even with the Stapatya Veda or Vastu housing, they say use as much local materials as possible for various reasons. So this locality and contextuality is very, very important. Very good. One more question that came from somebody. She's here, and she said, "What do you have to learn Sanskrit to become good at Ayurveda? If you want to become like a little bit more expert?" And since actually you particularly mentioned one sutra, what do you think is the value of actually learning Sanskrit or chanting it for Ayurveda?
Well, your question was, is it necessary? Yeah, sorry, it is. It's not that you have to memorize the samhitas. I haven't. I want to. I haven't. You don't have to memorize them to be able to practice Ayurveda or to use it for yourself in a manner that is beneficial. But if you want to be able to reach deep into the knowledge and find not just insights of like, what should I eat today, but use it in a way that actually deepens your understanding of life. The Sanskrit is such an integral part of it, because Sanskrit as a language, Sanskrit as a system carries such incredible energy, and the chanting, even the mental rumination over Sanskrit sutras brings a particular kind of energy, because when these eminent sages were writing or composing, they weren't even writing, it was an oral tradition. When they were composing these sutras, they were choosing syllable for syllable the sounds that would be necessary to work with the system they were describing. So for example, the sutra about kapha disorders, about excess of kapha vriddhi, has a lot of sharp biting sounds, a lot of because those are the sounds that, for sleeping kapha is relaxed and I'm a little lethargic, and it's maybe there's a little too much of that in your body. You want sounds that will be snappy, that'll wake it up. So even the sutra on Kapha Vriddhi is filled with the therapeutic qualities that will help to reduce Kapha Vriddhi. And this is throughout the Sanskrit text, this is throughout the Sanskrit literature. Even the chanting can be therapeutic. I remember I myself was given the chanting of the Hanuman Chalisa. I was given the chant, well, that's actually in Braj, that's not in Sanskrit, but I was given the chanting of various texts as a therapeutic means to deal with things I was going through. And I have seen that used for others as well. So yes, learning Sanskrit is a very valuable part of practicing Ayurveda. It is not essential to learn all of the texts by heart. It is not necessary to, hold yourself to an impossible standard, but the learning of it, of the language, will help to deepen your relationship with the knowledge. It will help to help you to learn it faster. And it is just so beautiful. It is uplifting in its own way as well.
Okay, I don't know if there's anybody else who has any questions. I'll wait for a second. Otherwise, there was this another question about what was that? So in TCM and this one, we use some of the same language. Again, staying in the language thing. I remember when I used acupuncture, they used to say damp heat inside the stomach. Now, that damp heat doesn't mean that the stomach is literally damp and literally hot. So, and they ask, like, what does it mean, like, if somebody says, oh, your vata is get into this throta. So how do you sort of, what kind of language do you use, if there's some way to describe, and does it have any connotation in the physical sense of channels and something moving?
Actually, this is a beautiful bridge from what I was just talking about, because the Sanskrit terminology is most accurate. The shrotas are not channels. They are channels, but they're not channels. They're the shrotamsi, right? Shrotas is actually the singular. Shrotamsi is the plural. It's confusing because the singular ends in an S, and we're like, what? That doesn't make sense. But anyway, the shrotamsi are not channels. They are passageways, but all of these words are approximations of what the actual thing is, right? What is actually happening is that through various varied avenues, things are moving through your body, or through your pranic body, or through your energetic body. And that is what we are focusing on when we're talking about shrotamsi, using the example you gave. Now, of course, to talk to a layperson or someone who doesn't understand, I will use the word channel. I will use, passage, or whatever, because that is something that they have relation to. And more important than being totally accurate is for them to understand, because, as I've said before, having agency over your own health is the most important aspect. Not, I know so much. Well, how is that worth anything if you can't use it for yourself? But the key factor is that when I'm describing it in my own head, when I'm understanding it in my Ayurvedic context, I am thinking of it in the Sanskrit terms. So they are still important, but there is also an importance to being able to bridge that with another thing. Now, you used TCM, traditional Chinese medicine, as an example. There are a lot of things that are in common. There are points, the marma points is what we call them, the pressure points that they call them. They're in many cases the same or similar in similar positions, because they're connected to the same things. Because the truth is that all these traditions, I remember I was reading about ancient Egyptian medicine as well, and now everyone makes fun that, oh, they thought the brain was useless, they thought you thought from your heart. But a lot of their understanding of medicine is copacetic with the Ayurvedic understanding of body and healing, and with the traditional Chinese medicine perspective. And a lot of these ancient perspectives, ancient lineages, ancient philosophies, they have this unified understanding that in fact leads me to have more confidence that this is us identifying something universal. It is not specific, it is not regional, it is not specific to India or Nepal or China or whatever. This is us who are people who try to understand the body, who try to understand health, aligning with something real. And so then when we find that, then we use the terminology, the language that is most useful in our cultural context. Sanskrit for the ancient Indians, Chinese for the ancient Chinese, but we are still describing the same reality. But unfortunately, when you're translating that into English, which doesn't have the same cultural context, which doesn't have the same philosophy, something is lost in the translation. And so it is a matter of balancing the desire to be accurate, which we do internally as we are understanding, diagnosing, processing, treating, and being available and relatable, which we do as we communicate to the person receiving the treatment or healing or advice or whatever. So absolutely, we can bridge that gap. But we also we cannot, in the process of trying to be relatable, lose the accuracy entirely. I find it concerning when I see people who actually are practicing Ayurveda completely devoid of Sanskrit because they're worried that people won't understand. But you can teach people Sanskrit. People learn words every day. You know, someone can learn the word shrotas and they can learn the word vata, pitta, kapha. You don't have to translate it to, I don't know, movement, digestion, and cohesion. Those are aspects of vata, pitta, kapha. But when you try to translate them like that, you lose the wholeness. And so I guess I'm just cautioning against too much, moving in the direction of being relatable, and losing that accurate, Sanskrit terminology entirely. Both are important.
Yeah, absolutely. And in fact, as you rightly said, Sanskrit is a phonetic and syllable-oriented language, much more for the sound value and not so much for what is written. And because when you speak something, it can be spoken in so many different ways. That's the vibrational value, and we're a vibrant, energetic being. That's sort of starting point. And that's a different tradition. Anyway, I would love to end or have any questions, but I would just appreciate if anybody. Everybody has some chance to say a thing or two. What did you learn from here? Was it helpful? And so on and so forth. Any comment on
I
what
see
you
Dadi
heard?
Andy has asked a question in chat, and I'd like to answer that.
Right.
I know that in Ayurveda, they talk about nadis, channels. I have never understood the physiology of that. The nadis are, this is the same thing, that it's, oh, you would like to comment. Please do.
Yeah. Hi, Nupur. It's really nice to see you. And I think you had a fantastic, very informative session. And sorry, there's some, Ruben uncle is also listening. That's you're getting some feedback. Yeah, I thought you did some really cool things. And my question is, I'm also a huge fan of Vasant Lad, the gentleman the school that you went to. I got a book like 20 years ago and I read it, and I think that my kitchen closet is, cabinet is my medicine cupboard kind of, I'm always like, but how much of the, I'm also an allopathy person in the sense I don't want to, have to do just one or the other. And I thought you took a really balanced approach to that. My real question is how much I'm not sure about the nadis, and, I do believe in the chakras, like the various chakras, I believe in it. So how much do you need in order to get the benefits of this? Or can you be like a light Ayurvedic user and get the benefits, or do you need like wholesale immersion? Because is there like a placebo effect with your mind and all that playing an important role? Like, do you know what I'm saying? Like, you're very skeptical.
Absolutely, I understand. And
I do believe in a mind-body connection. I do meditation. It's not heavy meditation. I really strongly believe, and you said something about, Dr. Lad can actually ask you to focus on his third eye and his pulse changes. I do believe in all of this. I'm just curious because I'd like the benefits, but I'm not sure I'm willing to give up all of my beliefs.
absolutely. See, this is the thing is I personally, and I as a subset of the many, many Ayurvedic practitioners I know, have seen, or heard of many patients, clients who come in who have a very particular set of beliefs. I personally had a client who was very, very Christian and believed very specific things about what were possible in the spiritual realm or in the physical realm because of their beliefs. Now, Ayurveda is still available to them. Ayurveda can still help them because Ayurveda can adapt to whatever their understanding of the world is, because it is not, again, it is not about being accurate. It is not about being right. It is about being healing. It is about being therapeutic. And so whatever is helpful, whatever is beneficial, that we use. Whatever is harmful, whatever is doing damage rather than healing, we discard. And so, for example, if I'm talking to someone Christian and they are pretty skeptical about the whole thing to begin with, I'm not going to start talking about the chakras because that's not something available to them, and so it's not useful. But for someone who is, maybe that is useful, and so I will bring that aspect. And when it comes to, do you have to be fully immersed to find use in Ayurveda? Absolutely not. You are practicing Ayurveda on yourself. If you go to an Ayurvedic physician and they say, you need to drink more water, and it would be nice if you would take half a teaspoon of triphala and some warm water every evening, and you do that, you're practicing Ayurveda on yourself because you're following the recommendations, you are feeling that it is bringing you a benefit, and so you're continuing to do it. This is also Ayurveda. This is also the practice of Ayurveda. Or if you are eating something and you're like, this is not sitting well, and you stop eating, that is the practice of Ayurveda. Ayurveda can be practiced as deeply or as lightly as you have the physical comfort or the mental comfort to bear, right? Now, for myself, for example, I eat out sometimes. Okay, sometimes the girl likes to go to a restaurant. Ayurvedically speaking, you should never eat food that was not prepared at home, that was not prepared by someone you know. You should never eat food that was, made by someone for money, because the energy that goes into that food is not correct. You should never eat something that was not prepared fresh, because old food loses prana and then it's not ideal. Okay, I eat leftovers sometimes. It happens. Sometimes you're like, that pizza yesterday was very good and I would like another piece. It happens. We are not perfect. So it is all a matter of you doing the best you can in any situation. You today are like, okay, I want to eat Ayurvedically. I want to eat the right spices today for what I need today. Do that. But if any other day you're like, I don't really have the mental space or energy or capacity to deal with that right now, all I can do is make sure that what I'm eating today is freshly cooked and warm, and that I am eating it with attention and paying attention and not watching TV or something. Okay, that's also good. Or you're like, I'm going to order something that is healthy from this restaurant instead of something that I know would be bad for me. Okay, even that, just that awareness that you're bringing to your diet or to your lifestyle or to whatever, that is the practice of Ayurveda. So Ayurveda is a great ocean. You can jump in or you can stay in the shallows. Either way, you will receive as much benefit as you want.
Excellent.
Hi, one question, Nupur. Thank you very much. That's been really a second wonderful session. But talking about staying in the shallows, my question from somebody who's a complete novice at this, what would you, is there one or two books that you would recommend that would give laymen, people who really don't know anything about Ayurveda but are curious to find out more, something about Ayurveda? Obviously, we are not trying to become experts like you, but just a better understanding of what it's all about.
Well, first, thank you for calling me an expert. It was very nice of you. I would not call myself such myself, but it was nice of you to say that. So the first recommendation I would have is the first book Dr. Lad wrote in English on Ayurveda, The Science of Self-Healing. It's a slim red volume with the man on the front with all kinds of things floating around him. You can't miss it. It's beautiful. It is so small, and it is chock full of wisdom, that book. It was the first thing I read from him, and I had done my bachelor's in Ayurveda at that point, and it still blew me away because he lays out the key principles, the key concepts, the key philosophical underpinnings in such a beautiful, simple way and readable way that it just kind of helps give the wholeness, and then you can dive deeper. So I would absolutely recommend that first. I don't even know that I have a second recommendation because that book really covers it all when it comes to the essential aspects, the simplest aspects. And then from there, of course, there's many things you can expand to, but I feel like you start there, you can't go wrong. Ayurveda, the science of self-healing. I'll put it in chat.
If I can add to that, Anil, very good question you asked, if I can add. If you think of all of Vedas, not just Ayurveda, they open like petals. They're wholeness outbound. So it's not like a component oriented that you start with this component. So it's like, you open as much as you want, and as you go deep, you want to go. So I think that book by Dr. Lard is so amazing. It's so thin and so easy to read.
Okay, great.
My mom just brought it to me. This is the book.
Oh, yeah, okay, great. Okay, thank you very much. That's very helpful. I'll get.
Thank you, Anil. Thank you. Hey, it's funny. We have 3 Anils on the call today. One from DC, one from Fairfield, one from Luxembourg. Anyway, that's interesting. Any thoughts, comments, please? I appreciate your joining, and any comments you have, or any thoughts, or any summary of what you learned, anything.
Stephen, please.
So I want to thank you very much for spending this time with us. It was very insightful, and love your perspective, love your brightness. And can you put in the chat or some way how we can contact you if we're interested in talking with you about a consultation?
Absolutely, I will do that. I wasn't sure if people would be interested, but absolutely, if you would love that, I would love that. I'll put my email in the chat, and please reach out.
Okay. Steve knows how to reach us. That's not an issue.
And I actually had one thing I would want to say in closing, unless there were any other questions.
Okay, go ahead and close out, and then because if
I've said this before. You mentioned this, that I said this in the first call, but in the first such consult thing. But I want to reiterate that the most important thing you can do in the current time is to breathe. And I would like to remind everyone that breathing doesn't mean what we usually think of as breathing, which is down to here, we go. That is not breathing. Breathing is when you take air in through your nostrils and it descends all the way behind your belly button, and you feel it. And sometimes naturally, if you're breathing deeply, there will be a pause when you're full of air. And then you exhale, and the air leaves from behind your belly button up through your chest, out your nose, and comes just in front of your face. This is breathing. And if you can do this, especially with attention, if you're not doing anything else, just close your eyes and do this breathing exercise. This will keep you healthy more than maybe any other thing you can do, because when you do this, you are connecting to your own internal wisdom, you are connecting to your own energy, your own immunity, your own power, and there is nothing more powerful, because you contain all of the wisdom, all of the power, all of the intensity of the universe. There's nothing more powerful.
Yeah, thank you. And that's connecting with your own prana, that's breath prana. So thank you very much. I'm going to stop the recording.